And so, as we were going through the summer and started to get some momentum, even obviously as you're dealing with COVID the whole time, we understood it was important to get our kids back in school. And so we made the decision, I think in June, that every parent in Florida would have the ability to send their kid to school in person when the school year started. And we didn't force the parents, because if a parent wanted to do virtual, we figured, it's fine. I mean, we were confident that it was the right thing to do from a safety perspective, and obviously critical from an academic perspective and a social development perspective. So we were able to do that. We are the only large state in the country to have 100% of the families with access to in-person education at the start of the school year. The only other states that had, there were only a handful of states that did, and most of them were much smaller population-wise than us. And so when we did the schools, there was a lot of naysayers. A lot of people, were saying schools need to be closed. They were wrong, and we were right on that, and we're happy that we were right on that. And it's something that if we had gotten that one wrong, you can have a good economy, you can have all these things, but if you'd have gotten that wrong and locked the kids out of school for a year, that would have had lasting consequences for our communities and for our state. So we were happy to be able to do that. And so I think what happened was, we worked hard to get people back to work. You started to see the economy do better than expected in Florida, even as early as last summer. And then we really served as kind of a respite for other citizens of our country and other states that were chafing under these lockdowns. They would just try to get to Florida. Some move permanently, some just ride out the lockdown, some just come for effectively a proverbial breath of fresh air. And so that ended up helping a lot of our hospitality industry. It allowed us to get more people back to work. These restaurants, some of these restaurants now have never done better than they've ever done in their history. We were just over in New Smyrna Beach. They said first quarter, the best in the history of the restaurant by far. And I hear that a lot of places that I go. But you remember a year ago, you had people like Fauci saying all these restaurants should be closed. And what I have when people come up to me, they say, thank God you didn't listen to Fauci, because we would be out of a job. So we ended up seeing that, and I know a lot of places. I was in the Panhandle recently. They never did better than they have in the last year in terms of the tourism and all these other things. Obviously, you see the property values in Florida. People want to buy homes here, and that's just, I think, as a result of doing it right. So when we came into this legislative session, I knew that we were going to be strong. I think these guys eventually came around to, but they had been given a lot of forecasts that said that it was going to be very bad. And so, I was just like, look, I have confidence. So we ended up going, and then as the session went on, they got the estimates in April, and it was clear that we were in really, really good shape. So that the budget we'll have today that I'll sign will likely have, once June is up and the fiscal year ends, we'll probably have about $10 billion in reserve. And that's just state money. It's not including any of this federal money. We're at 9.5 billion after May. But what's happened is when they did the estimates in April, we took in almost 800 million above estimate. So they're literally doing an estimate in real time, making an estimate for April, May, June, last 3 months of the fiscal year, and they undershot the April by 800 million. May, we think it's going to be at least 500 million that we will have got over what they estimated. And so if you get another half a billion in June, that's going to be $10 billion that we'll have in reserve. That puts us in an awfully strong position to weather any future storms. You would have told somebody that we'd have $10 billion in reserves last year, nobody would have believed. I probably wouldn't have believed you, to be honest with you, and I was the one that was the most bullish. So I think it's a testament to the fact that Florida, has been free. People are free to make decisions and go about their lives. Obviously, these legislators over a number of years have produced budgets, and obviously I've signed a couple budgets. But if you look at Florida, we have, like New York has millions of fewer people than we do. Their budget is over twice the size of Florida's budget. because we're very prudent with how we spend money. Our infrastructure is better. Our K-12 performs better. We have the best state university system in the country for 4 years in a row by U.S. News and World Report. So you look at that and you look at the budget that we're signing today, we're doing more for education when a lot of people thought we were going to have to do less. We're doing more for water resources and environment and things that matter to both of our presiding officers very much, way more than anyone thought was possible. We're doing bonuses for all law enforcement, fire, and first responders, which nobody was, a lot of people said we wouldn't be able to get that done. So we've done all these things to meet all these key needs from the state, and yet we do that with the lowest per capita tax burden in the United States. So we're proud of what this budget will accomplish. You know, I mentioned education. You know, we've got almost $2 billion for early childhood education, almost $23 billion for K-12 system. We did do last year the biggest teacher compensation expansion in a generation, and we actually did that and more this year. So they've even added more, and our goal is to get the average minimum salary for teachers, and this is throughout the public, the school districts and the charter schools, to be $47,500. You know, only 12% of school districts in the whole country have average minimum even above $40,000. So we were bottom half of states, or states. Now we're going to be, you know, in the top 10. Hopefully we'll be able to be in the top 4 or 5 when all the dust settles. So we're proud of that, but we're also proud of, because our schools were open. And when we were pushing to do this, I mean, you had, oh my God, media was so against the schools. The media wanted to lock the kids out of school the whole year. I mean, let's just be honest. They tried to scare parents over and over again. You had some of these bureaucrats, particularly in D.C., that were fear-mongering, and the data was in. Last June, the data was in. We knew that it was the right thing to do. So we pushed forward. There was a lot of people that were opposed to that. I'll tell you, these superintendents they wanted to get back. Most of the teachers wanted to get back. I know the teachers union sued us to close the schools, but at the end of the day, most of the teachers did want to go back because they understood what a year of virtual would have been like for the students. And so because principals had to work extra hard, the teachers had to work hard, we were able to do $1,000 bonuses for all principals and all K through 12 teachers throughout the state of Florida for public and for charter. So that's a pretty big deal to be able to get that accomplished. We also understand that the issue of mental health has been a perennial issue. It's an issue that's very difficult to tackle in some respects. It's an issue that our First Lady, my great wife, has done a lot of good things for the state on, but we also understood when the pandemic hit, this was throwing a lot of things up in the air, and this has exacerbated problems. But I will tell you this, whatever mental health challenges we have in Florida, they would have been way worse had we not had things open. I can tell you that right now, because you look at these other states that continue to do lockdown, continue to keep people out of school and out of work, and those problems are going to mount dramatically. So here in Florida, we understand for our school children it's important. We have $120 million for in-school mental health initiatives, so that's a $20 million increase over last year. And we also have $5.5 million for youth mental awareness and assistance, which the First Lady has been involved with specifically, and we really appreciate that. But then there's another $137.6 million for community-based services for adults and children with mental wellness needs. So all told, you look at all the different agencies that we fund and all the different programs, we got about $2.5 billion for mental health and substance abuse throughout the state of Florida. So we understand it's a challenge, but we're stepping up to meet the challenge. We also gotten a lot of momentum on supporting our water infrastructure and improving our water resources, which is very important for a state that's built around fishing and boating and enjoying the outdoors. And we made a lot of progress my first 2 years as governor. A lot of people thought that given the circumstances, that this was going to get whacked and our momentum was going to get derailed. But actually, if you look, there's actually more money for things like Everglades and water resources and water quality than even I asked for in the budget. I think they did even more things, and I know both Senator Simpson and Speaker Sprowls were instrumental in that. So this is going to put us on track. We're going to be able to complete some of these major reservoirs and stormwater treatment areas just within the next couple years that are going to have such an important impact on kind of the plumbing, the natural plumbing of the state of Florida. We also have the first time, I think, certainly in Florida history, I don't know many other states that have done this, we started a program, Resilient Florida, to be able to address the needs that we face as a storm-prone state, as a state that has to deal with a lot of flooding. So we started with $500 million of seed money, and then through the Speaker and Wilton working together, there's going to be a recurring pot of over $100 million that comes in every year. And so these will be local communities can apply for these grants, and you could be able to do things. So we have some areas, they flood all the time. If you had some infrastructure there, you'd be able to potentially mitigate that. And there's a whole host of things that go into that. We're also proud of the amount of money that's been put in for beach renourishment. I mean, it's a very important thing. So we're going to have $150 million for beach renourishment, which is important when you have 1,300 miles of coastline that we're being good stewards of that. One of the things we did when the pandemic pushed a lot of people into remote work, we saw the traffic declined in most parts of Florida. So we accelerated some of these road projects in highly congested areas like in I-4 in Orlando, did one in Tampa, some other places. But then what happened was because they were projecting less revenue, our DOT had to basically delay or plan to delay some of these projects into the future because they didn't know how much money. Well, with the budget today, the work program for the Florida Department of Transportation is fully funded, so we're going to be able to get all these projects on track, and actually, we may even be able to accelerate some. I think we have the resources, the money to pay to accelerate it. I think it's just there's a high demand for these services that I think that'll be probably the one impediment that we end up doing. But this is going to be a fully funded work program, which we're really, really supportive of. And I did mention the bonuses for police, fire, first responders, $1,000 each across the board. That's like 175,000 individuals across the state of Florida. And we understood when COVID hit, there's folks in white-collar jobs could work from home, remote, and God bless you if you did. But, the people in uniform have to show up every day. They can't keep the streets safe on Zoom. You can't put out a fire on Zoom. You just got to be there. And so they were there from the very beginning, day in, day out. And then particularly with our police, they've been treated horribly throughout this country in some of these communities. And what we said here is we're standing by law enforcement. We're standing by law enforcement, we have your back, and we understand the importance that supporting law enforcement plays in maintaining public safety in those areas that have moved to defund police or just haven't supported their law enforcement. You're seeing crime increase dramatically in some of these places throughout the United States of America. We don't want that in Florida, so we appreciate the service. So I think because of all those factors, we thought it was important to seek bonuses for all of our first responders, including police. So we're able to get that in the budget here, $1,000 for every sworn law enforcement, firefighter, and EMT in the state of Florida. So that's going to be a really, really big deal. So I think that what this budget shows is that we spend money prudently, but I think we spend it effectively. And I think we're focusing on areas that will really make a difference. Obviously, rewarding some of the folks who've been instrumental in the last year to keep Florida moving forward. Of course, maintaining such a low tax burden, which we're going to continue to do, and then having a lot of money left over in reserves, in case something happens down the pike. And I think we are in, even though there's a lot of good signs in Florida, if you look nationally, I think there's a lot of uncertainty. You see inflation. Look at gas. Gas has gone up tremendously. A lot of the materials that people need to do business have gone up. So you have inflationary pressures. You're just going to have a lot of things, and we just have to be ready. And these are things that are far beyond the control of a state government, of course, but they're things that we're going to have to contend with. And so I think we have an adequate cushion to be able to deal with this. Final thing I'll say before I turn it over to the Speaker and the President, we did about $1.5 billion in vetoes. out of the budget. Most of that was back of the bill, and the largest chunk of that was something that I actually requested, was $1 billion to create an emergency response fund. And the idea was, if we have emergencies and you need to pay for response, you don't have to use general revenue. You have a fund, you pay, you get your federal reimbursements back into that fund, and it basically just runs off budget. The legislature agreed, we set it up. The problem is, after they did that, the federal government came with kind of rules and guidance about how the money could be spent that we got from the feds. We were going to use federal dollars for this. And they said, basically, you can't, it's a grant, so you got to do normal procurement. Well, in an emergency situation, you don't do normal procurement. You got to get the money out the door. So it would be totally ineffective to use it for emergency. But then they said that it doesn't apply for a situation like that anyway, so we'd end up assuming a lot of risk and having to battle with the feds. So I think it's a good idea. I'm glad they did it. I would like to do it in the future, but I couldn't in good conscience put that money in there knowing that it was not going to be able to be used for that, and if we did, it was going to be clawed back by the federal government. So that was kind of the major thing, but I think the rest, by and large, we did $1 billion in vetoes last time. But those billion, a lot of that was general revenue vetoes. We did do some trust fund vetoes. So I think this time, because the budget's in good shape, we were able to do, so these guys got more of some of their initiatives. And quite frankly, there were things I vetoed last time that I supported. Heck, I vetoed my own stuff in some respects because we just didn't know, and we had to make tough decisions so that Florida was prepared to handle whatever came down the pike with COVID-19. And I think we were able to do that effectively. So that's the picture with those vetoes. But I think all things considered, you look at a lot of the major issues that we're dealing with, and I think the legislature did a really good job to address, almost all the key issues. And so I thank them for that, and we'll turn it over to President Simpson.
And we really appreciate the governor being in Zephyrhills today, and we are in Senator Burgess's district. I have to remind myself of that now because it's like this is my district, but it's really not. It's really Senator Burgess's district.
We'll take it.
Yes, and for one more year. And then our budget chair in the Senate was Kelly Stargell, and she did a wonderful job this year putting the budget together. As everyone here knows, it's a $101 billion budget. The speaker's team and representatives worked very well with us, not only in this area, but structurally. What I was proud of for the state of Florida, the $9+ billion of reserves is not by accident, it was planned. We have a AAA bond rating in the state of Florida by all three agencies. We did structural one-time big needs with a lot of the stimulus dollars that came down to Florida. We have $2 billion additional in transportation. We put $300 million into the wildlife corridors. So if that's important to you, an additional $100 million into Florida Forever. And so we structurally did things with sea level rise. That was a major priority of the speakers. We started that program here in the state of Florida, the first of its kind. $500 million initially with a recurring funding of $100 million a year, a little over $100 million. Same thing with septic to sewer systems. City of Zephyrhills, if you've got any of those systems shovel ready, I would be calling DEP right away to get in on some of that $500 million because it's available. That's what it's there for. So we wanted to put enough resources out there to make a large impact in the initial projects that are shovel ready, and then have a recurring stream that would continue afterwards, a little over $100 million in that fund also. All along, affordable housing, that gets a big story every year. And every year, there's a Sadowski fund that the legislature, we would generally sweep a lot of those funds. But we're still spending $500-600 million a year in affordable housing. This year with the budget we did, there's an additional $70 million a year going to affordable housing of state funds through that trust fund. So the last 10 years, we've averaged about $140 million a year going to affordable housing. Now it's going to be a little over $200 million a year. In addition to that, and I'll be brief and turn to the speaker, but we did $1 billion a year tax cut. So one of the things that we don't talk about this year is we did the Wayfair bill. So if you were an out-of-state company not charging sales tax to in-state needs, we were not collecting that tax. So every small business that's represented in this room, and I know there's a lot of them, was at a disadvantage to your out-of-state competitors. We fixed that loophole. And then we took the money and we did two things with it. We said, first of all, we're going to backfill the unemployment compensation fund, $4 billion. So that's the first 4 years. And then we're going to take that money and do $1 billion a year tax cut on businesses for the rent tax. So in here, 4 years from now, if you're paying a lease or rent to anyone, you're essentially going to go to zero from wherever you are today. So go back and look at that amount of money every month, and you'll see those tax cuts that are coming after the unemployment compensation fund gets full. And the reason we did the unemployment compensation funds, every small business in the state would have been impacted by it. Today, the way your state set this budget up, there will be no impact, and 4 years from now, you get a big tax cut as we do that. So we thought it was very important to stimulate small business. We thought the projects that we did were very stimulative to blue-collar workers, people that have to go to work every day. You know, during the pandemic, and the governor mentioned teachers, law enforcement, and paramedics. There wasn't a truck driver that wasn't working, and there wasn't a farmer that wasn't working every day. And every day you went to Publix or Walmart or wherever you shop, there was groceries there and food there because of the hard, working men and women of this area, and not only this area, but across the entire state. And so we're very proud of that. We're very proud of this budget. Thank you, Governor. I was going to call him Vito Corleone after the remark he made earlier. I mean, how many governors, and it's $1 billion each year, right? And but certainly last year, the $1 billion came under a lot of stress with the pandemic coming on, and we had no idea what the budget was going to look like this year coming into it. And so each month it got much better, and a lot of that credit goes to our governor for making sure we were opened up. We were opened up very quickly. We got kids back in schools. We went to work, saved a lot of small businesses, and we're very proud to have supported the governor in those efforts. And we appreciate the light touch this year, Vito, on the budget. So thank you, Governor.
Well, it's great to be here with President Simpson, Senator Burgess, members of the Pasco delegation. We've got Representative Randy Maggard, who's part of this delegation, Representative Mariano, Representative Artie and Zika, who are here as House members. What a great budget year for us. Coming into this, the governor and the president mentioned this, but here we are, rewind about a year ago, and we're thinking about the next legislative session, thinking that it is going to be financial Armageddon. And much to the folks' credit behind me, including the governor and the Senate president, we all got together and say, veto it all, Governor, as much as you can, because we don't know what the future is going to bring, and we have to prepare for the next session. But what happened was real leadership. The budget that's going to be signed today isn't just be organic growth, right? It was purposeful. You look across the country in places that have Gavin Newsom as their governor or Andrew Cuomo as their governor, and they're not having days like today in city councils just like this one with hardworking people around shaking their head because they know the difference between having their business open and having their business closed. They know the difference between being able to have their child in a classroom where they're engaging with students and engaging with their teacher and coming home and excited about learning and not being able to go to school at all. And the reason that we're here today, the reason that we have the things that we have in this budget, which I'm going to talk about briefly, is because of this governor, because of the leaders behind me who said, we don't care what CNN is saying, we don't care what the national pundits are saying, we don't care what federal bureaucrats are saying, our kids are going to school and our people are going back to their jobs. But I think it did provide us a unique opportunity as a legislature. We got to take a step back during the pandemic and say, so often we're in the hustle and bustle of life and we think about, what do we need today? Not what are we going to need tomorrow and 20 years from now, and what does our state look like in 30 years? And we talked about how we wanted to prepare Florida today for the challenges of tomorrow. And that's what this budget was really about. And I praise the leadership of the Senate President, Senator Stargel, Chairman Trumbull in the House, on what we did. Think about it, K-12 education. What's more important than our children? In addition to the governor making sure that children are back in the classroom, we increased the budget spend over $315 million for K-12 education this budget year because we want our kids back in the classroom. We want to make up any learning gains that they may have missed. We talked about Schools of Hope is in this budget, which allows children in Pasco, Pinellas, Polk County, Hillsborough County, who are in perpetual failing schools to be able to have access to an amazing choice option to get their kids on a pathway to prosperity. We talked about jobs. Nothing's more important than our families being able to go get a job, to find purposeful work that not only give them a sense of purpose, but provides for their family. We had some challenges during the pandemic. We've invested hundreds of millions of dollars in making sure not only do we have the technology we need when it comes to workforce, but that people in our community, in Pasco County, in Pinellas, and throughout the state who are looking for a job, that there's real help for people to let them know what credentials they need, how they can get a job, what pays the best, and what's going to be the thing that's going to fulfill them. That's in this budget. We thought about our most vulnerable population. Those of us who got to get up every day during the pandemic and go to work, got to see our coworkers, but there were a lot of people who couldn't do any of that. You know, our elderly population, our disabled population. There's tens of millions of dollars in this budget to take people off the disability waiting lists, to provide for people with Alzheimer's respite care. And for the first time since 1976, this legislature took the lead to cover postpartum moms after they give birth to make sure that they're healthy, and extended that coverage from 2 months to 12 months. And the last thing I'll mention is, you know, we talk about people are going to be flocking. I mean, I think, you know, if you wake up and you're in Michigan tomorrow, chances are you're not going to Chicago for vacation. You're coming here to the state of Florida. You're going to come to Pasco County. You're going to come to Clearwater. You're going to come to Tarpon Springs, where Congressman Bill Rackus and I live, and you're going to enjoy the sunshine. Nothing is more important to our future than our environment. And it seems like a decent place like Zephyrhills to talk about clean water.
You're here. There you go.
But this governor, this Senate president, there has never been a legislature that has championed Florida's environment more than this one. The president and the governor talked about how we partnered on resiliency and septic to sewer. What could be better than preparing for the future to make sure that our communities don't flood, that it doesn't ruin our homes and our businesses, that it keeps our homeowners' insurance low, and that communities like Zephyrhills have the ability to upgrade their sewer infrastructure to make sure that is up to date, that it's not hurting our water quality. You know, we want to make sure that, you know, in addition to being on a farm in Trilby, that you can go to a beach in Clearwater. Which you're going to be able to do because under this budget, we have historic funding for beach renourishment. We want your families to be outside. The governor in a Home Depot just a couple of weeks ago signed Freedom Week, our tax package, to encourage Floridians to go outside. There's more money in this budget to fund our state parks and to encourage our families to be outside than ever before. We couldn't be more proud of this budget because it prepares Florida today for the challenges of tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Governor, and members of the legislature who made this happen.
Okay. And I'm going to sign in just a second, but I also was remiss for not thanking them. They did the budget on time. It was on the Friday afternoon. They did it. They got out of town, didn't have to extend, and so that isn't always the case. So great job there, and we'll go ahead and do the John Hancock. Okay, one for you, one for you. All right. So, well, between you two, okay, that guy. All right, that guy. They did well here. Definitely this part of Florida had a big part to do with all these guys in these key positions. So we appreciate it. We appreciate the hard work. We're excited about some of the opportunities that lies ahead. I think this provides a good blueprint for us to be able to meet a lot of challenges to our state. And I can tell you that there's a lot of people that I think over the last year and a half have said, "Thank God I live in Florida." So. Okay, questions? Anybody got a question? Yes, sir.
About funding for coastal communities dealing with flooding issues, but I want to ask you about two potential line items that you're talking about. One of them was $750,000 for the Gulf Port linear coastal park, and that would have provided funding for increasing their boardwalk, coastal restoration, basically dealing with some flooding issues that they're having downtown. So I want to ask you about why that one was line item, and then the other one is $400,000 for Feeding America Tampa Bay, which has clearly had a very difficult year, feeding a lot of other people who have.
Well, we did a huge amount of money, if you look in the budget, for different types of nutrition. Then there's also federal money that people are able to access locally for a lot of those issues. And so I think we tried to say if there was something that they could do federally to meet a need, then we would want to do that. If there were other aspects that we were funding that didn't require a line on, clearly that type of boardwalk there's hundreds of millions of dollars now, that's available for that. Yes, sir.
When do you think the first responders may receive their check for $1,000?
I hope so. So basically, the budget's now signed. Now, we had the agencies working to get this moving, but it's going to take, it's not something we just turn around immediately, so they're going to be working on it. And I think we're pretty confident we can get the teachers by the end of the summer, and I'm hoping to get the first responders. The difference is the teachers, there's already a database of the teachers. So we know who they are, all the school districts, all the charter school teachers, and we could just do it. With the first responders, some of these EMTs, so you're going to have to get all that information. So they are working on doing that, but obviously we want to get it out as soon as possible. But I think on that, it's more of an issue of making sure we're getting everybody that was promised 175,000. So I want to make sure we get all those folks there and that we're doing it. And we do have some money. We did more money than just that for the administration and in case there was more people that needed to be paid. So, but those are two priorities because those folks, I think, are looking forward to it. It's something that we fought for, so hopefully we'll be able to get something to them, as soon as possible.
Governor, why Zephyrhills today? Anything Tampa Bay that you're excited about?
Got this guy right here. Got this guy. But really, the region here should feel very proud. I mean, if you look just the greater Tampa Bay region, you have the presiding officers, you have appropriations in the Senate. Trumbull's from the Panhandle. We'll give them a pass on that. But I mean, I'm grew up in this region too. So I mean, it is interesting just to see that so many folks, from these counties, Pinellas, Pasco, Polk are really leading and doing a lot of great stuff. We've done a lot of stuff with Chris recently in Pinellas County. We did the Resilient Florida bill signing in Tarpon Springs in his district, and I know we've done some other stuff with education. So we said, look, we want to come, and we asked Senator Simpson where would make sense, and he thought there'd be no better place than Zephyrhills. And so even though it may not be technically in his district, obviously, Pasco has done so well with all this. I'm looking at these things that we're approving. It's signed. And I'm looking through these things, and I'm just thinking to myself, they're going to build a statue after this guy because they're going to have a lot of stuff. So, but no, we're really proud of that. We're proud of the friends that we have. Me personally, proud of all the friends we have in Pasco County because you got a lot of great people here, and you did very well in this budget. So you guys should be happy. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, oh yeah. We're going to Sunrise Eatery if you want to come. It's just right down the street.
Okay, all right, I'll check with Grant. Sunrise Eatery.
This is literally like 5 minutes away.
Going to?
Yeah, he's going.